Okay guys, Brent Hull Wednesday design video in San Jose, California. A transformative ranch, okay, groovy ranch turned into an arts and crafts kind of green and green look. Let me know what you guys think. So we got a job in San Jose, California. This is the house, showing you the two different sides. Front door, you got a two-car garage. We're actually going to drive right through this garage to a driveway that goes in the back. And so, you know, we're working through these plans with the homeowner. This was their kind of initial design idea here. And so, you know, you're looking at kind of a 1970s ranch. Okay, so we're looking at something that's not really period appropriate. But as I've said before, the ranch period and the arts and crafts period can work. It's not hard to take a ranch style house and turn it into an arts and crafts house because of the low pitch roof, the deep overhanging eaves. There's ways to do it that work on this house. And so if we just took their front and kind of their initial design, we're trying to encourage better arts and crafts detailing, better green and green stuff. So instead of just having a fence over here on the side, we're going to actually try to create a porte cochere that they drive through and then tie that into with the other elements on the house so that the entry is more important. This is kind of a courtyard going back. There'll be a window back inside there. That the garage door ends up becoming really more charming. Even the side fence can be a little bit more interesting than it is. Here's another version where we're kind of showing that carriage style house, another way of doing that pergola. If you really wanted to go kind of the green and green route, which these kinds were interested in, we can really ended up creating that. So what happens here is that we take an entry that's kind of mid-century, well, whatever that is, 70s groovy, and we're going to elevate that. So this design is essentially elevating this entry so that this thing, and you're looking back through a courtyard, so it's a little bit deceiving, but that driveway, that entry really comes forward. And look at the fun details we're able to put in with these long timbers over the head. Notice we've opened up the rafter tails, opened up the eaves. You got a closed eave on this house, but we're actually going to open that up so you see exposed rafter tails. Instead of doing the fence here, going back to the back, we're actually going to do this thing that contributes. So the whole front of this facade really is now very interesting. It's very arts and crafts and green and greeny, and I think it looks really handsome and real pretty. You know, this other version of it, you know, is really just changing details. Your entry is a little bit more prominent in this one. You're changing the way that the beams and things go together. Still have a one-car garage. I'm thinking I like the stone better, but there's, you know, fun details that you can do here. Notice too, on this house, they have this lower detail with this kind of rubble stone. We could still play around with that where this becomes, I mean, it could, if you go in the green and green tradition, intermix this with larger boulders, even some clinker brick in here, and then change this siding from that vertical T111, whatever that material is, to a siding that goes across here, or a shingle, I think is what Ashland's showing on these, which would be very appropriate to that green and green style. So notice that we're changing the windows, we're opening up the eaves, we're changing materials, we're playing around with the materials that are being used on this house, so it contributes and tells a better story, tells a better arts and crafts story, elevating this entry, going from that two-car design to a one-car design so that we can drive back through there. It becomes, I think, a very charming house and a very charming way of kind of organizing and putting this house together. It isn't huge dollars because we're not talking about changing the square footage or even the placement of how this goes together. All right, this is a living room and it's going to stay a living room. This is the entry, it's going to stay an entry. This is the garage, is going to stay a garage. But by changing the materials and by changing the story of the materials and how that was put together and when it was put together, we can transform this into something that's really handsome, inviting, and contributing and carry that through all the way to the back. You know, if you go to the back garage and how it's put together, it too, you know, you drive down this driveway and all of a sudden you're back to a two-car garage back here with some kind of guest house or a study next to it. And so again, now all the parts and pieces are contributing. Now the parts and pieces kind of telling the same story. Materials are so important when you're doing these jobs, when you're doing these things. You still have siding, you still have stone, you still have windows, but it's the type of windows, it's these long beams that go over top of them. You're borrowing from other traditions in order to change the narrative. And so you could do any number of materials on here. It doesn't have to be this vertical thing. And notice that I'm taking this vertical thing and turning it into this wood siding here, which I think really helps. Notice the entry, how that changes, and how these columns and that pergola in this one, or that gable end here, really changes, you know, where your front door is. It's hard to tell where the door is because you actually go through this entry and go this way into a living room, which is that room. So this one I think I like better just as a streetscape, as a way to define where I'm supposed to go and where I'm supposed to drive. As the homeowner, you're really driving back through that porte cochere, going back to the back where you're going to park and live, and there's a big living room on the back side. So, you know, this one I think communicates better about just kind of the story of the house. This one is, I like the materials being used here. But again, you go from something that's mid-century 70s kind of groovy into something that really has this arts and crafts feel, which this homeowner loves. Let me know what you guys think. Changing that garage from a 2-car to 1-car with that porte cochere drive-through, I think it really helps. Notice that we changed windows, we changed materials, we opened the eaves, all those small little things that make a big difference. Let me know what you guys think. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.